Coming up on The Returned.
All of a sudden, I was out of my body, and I was up to the ceiling looking down. I could see the dentist, I could see his hygienist, then I saw my wife, and then all of a sudden,
Hi, and welcome to The Returned. The truth always follows you back. Hi, and welcome to The Returned, a place where we share near-death stories, out-of-body experiences, spiritual awakenings, signs from spirit, and the journeys of healers and lightworkers from around the world. Today, we sit with Dr. David Klee, a professional musician whose life changed in an instant. What began as a routine visit to the dentist became something that would forever reshape his understanding of life, death, and the soul. David, welcome to The Returned.
good morning.
Good morning. David, before we get to the heart of the conversation, I like to ground the audience in who you were before your experience, and did religion or spirituality play a role in your life or upbringing?
Okay. Well, first of all, I was born in the glorious state of Indianapolis, Indiana, but I was born almost 2 months prematurely. This is back in the ancient days, the early 1950s. And usually, if you're born premature like that, it's almost like a death sentence. But somehow I overcame that and I made it. But I contracted rheumatic fever while I was still in the hospital. And so I ended up staying in the hospital for several months. And unfortunately, because of being born premature along with the rheumatic fever, I had several internal and external deformities that I've had to live with my entire life. And one of those has been atrial fibrillation, which I've had to deal with my entire life, and I'll get into it more as we go. So by age 7, my parents decided I needed to live a healthier life, so we moved down to Florida. And I also grew up with 2 beautiful, wonderful brothers, and the family was my focus growing up. It was always very warm and loving. We played a lot of ball with my dad, and it was just a very healthy environment. And so that was I guess you could say that was my foundation I had to have that I desperately needed because on the other side, as early as the 3rd and 4th grade, I started to be bullied. And we think about, so what is a bully? A bully, it can be any shape or form that perceives you as different, either physically, emotionally, mentally, or what you wear or anything. And so what happens, for some reason, they have this need to impress upon other kids that they're superior in some way. So I was heavily bullied, and not only bullied, I was routinely beat up. And so even in elementary school, and in elementary school, this is in Florida, so we didn't have indoor hallways. All the hallways were outside. And they saw nothing with as I was walking along, they would grab me and slam me against the post of the hallway. And very rarely did teachers ever catch this. They were really good at it. And then by junior high school, the bullying got so bad that they would even drag me into the boys' bathroom and take turns beating me up, slamming me against the sinks and toilets, sticking my head in the toilets, doing things like that. And yes, I did try to fight back, but I was so small. I was highly underweight. I was extremely underweight because of being born premature. So they took great delight in doing that to me. And I learned early on I could find myself I could get into a special place where when they started beating on me, I would just collapse on the floor and I would just withdraw emotionally and mentally into this special place until they were done. And then once they were done, I would find a way to get back up and do my day. And I would try to pretend that nothing had happened. Even though I may have blood on me, I had chipped teeth and all that. And of course, when I would go home, my mother would see it, and she was part Italian, so she would literally raise the roof, and she would go to the schools and try to get that corrected, and the administration would try, but as we know, it's very hard to do at that level. And so this is what I grew up with, and by the time I was in high school, I felt completely worthless because they convinced me, the hood, I call them the hoods. They convinced me that I was worthless. I had no reason to live. Why on the earth am I even on this planet? They would do that to me. So because of that, I never studied. I never cracked a book. I figured, why? I'm stupid. I cannot do anything. And this is the way it was. Fortunately, by by the time I graduated from high school, most of the bullies had either dropped out or left high school, and somehow I managed to graduate with a C minus average, even having not ever really studied. I did graduate, and then this is back during the early middle part of the Vietnam War, and back then, when you graduated from high school, you could be drafted and go to Vietnam. Well, they also had a policy that if you went right to college that next year, you could defer being drafted until you graduate from college. So I did that and I started college, but at the same time, I was doing the same thing academically. I just felt so worthless and I would barely get through classes. I was dropping classes. I was not excelling at all. And at the same time, though, when I was in the fourth grade, looking back, I had started music in the fourth grade. They had a beginning band program. And just on a lighter note, one day I told my parents I wanted to play in the new school band, and they asked me, "What do you want to play?" And I said, "I want to play the flute." And they went, "A flute? That's a girl's instrument." And I said, "But that's what I'm hearing in my head." And they said, "Well, we'll take you to the music store." So they took me to the music store, and the music store guy asked me the same question. And I told him, "Well, I want to play the flute." And he said, "Yeah, it's a girl's instrument." He said the same thing. Anyway, I said, "Okay, what do you want me to try?" So I tried several instruments. Finally, they handed me the flute, and I played it. Everybody shut up, and I went home with the flute. So that's what I
That's
did all through
fantastic.
school. And I played it all through school. That was my salvation back then, because when I went to band class, I wasn't a worthless person. I wasn't a failure. I was a musician, and I found out that I actually excelled as a musician. I did very well as a musician, in fact. And by the time I graduated from high school, I realized I wanted to major in music. I wanted to major in performance. So here I was in college, and at the same time, I was starting to reach out to start my own little band and get into professional music. Back then in Tampa, Florida, there were over 350 nightclubs in the Tampa Bay, Clearwater, St. Petersburg area. This is back in the 1970s, and they all had live music. Nowadays, you rarely see that, but back then they did. Anywhere from a piano bar to multi bands in these clubs. So I put a little group together, and then about a year later, they changed the draft where they had a lottery system. This is where most of you younger people will have no idea that you did this, where they would take your first initials of your last name and they would put it in a lottery system. And depending upon what was drawn, anywhere from 1 to 365, the larger your number, the less chance you would be drafted that year. And then after that year, you could not be drafted. So fortunately, I got a very high lottery number, and I knew I would not be drafted. So I immediately quit college and I got into music full time. So I was playing music full time in Tampa, Florida. And I was living the life. I still could, I knew that I was a failure academically, but musically I was just excelling. And then eventually, to make a long story short, I had an offer to go on the road with some groups. So we started touring and we ended up playing through 37 different states, Bahamas, cruise ships. And I thought, hot dog, this is what I want to do with my life. And it was just wonderful. And by then I was playing flute, sax, and electric bass. And then I had an offer to audition for a country artist nobody's probably ever heard of called Razzie Bailey. He was in between record labels, and he was based out of Tampa, Florida, not Tampa, Florida, Macon, Georgia. So I auditioned and I got accepted. So for 2 years, I played bass for him primarily. Now, when I played bass for him, we might go in front and do a bluegrass festival. There might be 20,000 people there. We'd play on the stage. Other times, we might play in these gigantic nightclubs that would hold 2 or 3,000 people. The beautiful thing about when I played with, we did these bluegrass festivals. Razzie was so-called the headliner. By being the headliner, we would go on stage and we would play and back him up first for an hour or 2 hours, and then he would leave the stage, and then young artists who had just signed with the record labels might come up to the stage, and then we would back them up. I backed up, seemingly, I think I backed up hundreds of young acts, and most of them were my age or younger. And and I didn't know it till years later. One of the acts I backed up because I backed up so many I didn't remember. One of the acts I backed up, they had just cut their first album, and it was a band called Alabama. Now, most people have heard
Oh,
that. And yes, they were a great bunch of guys. I had a great time with them. So here I am in Macon, Georgia, working up to my first NDE. And by age 28, my wisdom teeth decided to come in. I was a late bloomer, nothing new. And they came in. I couldn't find a dentist because, you need to live there to find a dentist. But I finally found one and I came in. And when I walked in, that's when he told me that he was just going to give me local shots on my teeth and then he would remove my wisdom teeth. I was very alarmed because I'm thinking, don't they put you to sleep normally? And he said, nah, we're good. So anyway, here I am, and he's trying to take out my wisdom teeth. Then he found out my wisdom teeth, the roots were hooked. They weren't straight, they were hooked like this. And so what happened, he couldn't pull them out. Well, then he decided, okay. So then he went back to his arsenal of weapons, I call them, and he come up with a chisel and a hammer, a dentist chisel and a hammer. And then he told me to put my arm like this, hold my chin good, and then he just started pounding on my wisdom teeth. Well, after he got a couple of them out, the pain, even though I had local shots, the pain was so incredibly bad. I was begging him, we need to get this thing off. I couldn't take the pain. And then all of a sudden, I was out of my body and I was up to the ceiling looking down. And for a moment, I was like, okay, I haven't experienced this before. What is this all about? And then I looked down again and I could see the dentist grabbing me, screaming, and I could see his hygienist, his helper, slapping me. And here I am just looking down. I'm peaceful, blissful. I'm just totally enjoying the moment. I felt there was no pain. There was nothing. So I was just looking around, enjoying all this. And I really wasn't sure what was happening, but I was content. I probably could have stayed there all day. And I noticed as I continued to look up and around, I could see 360. You've heard this many times with NDEs, but I could look around and see And I saw the receptionist. She had gotten all upset hearing the commotion in the dentist's office. So she had stood up looking that way. And then I saw my wife. She was in the waiting area and she had a magazine. She put the magazine down and she was looking all concerned, like, what on earth? So there I was. And it seemed like, I don't know, several minutes I was there looking around. And then all of a sudden, I was back in my body just like that. And oh my gosh, the pain. I was back with that pain. And then the hygienist, she was still slapping me. And she finally saw me open my eyes, so she stopped. And then I could see the dentist. He stepped back in his chair and was just like, he was so relieved. I'm sure like I made his day on that one. And before I left, he told me that he could not find a pulse for a couple minutes. He said there was no pulse. And I was just like, huh? I didn't know what happened. But the interesting thing about this, I did not remember what happened up there. I had no memory at the time. So my wife drove me home to our hotel room, and but I just didn't remember. But I knew something profound had happened. Something had changed, and I
Mm.
didn't know what. And then that night, she had to drive me to the club. I was supposed to play that night. And so I started playing between my emotional state and my physical state. I really couldn't play, and I explained to Razzie. And I didn't tell him about the NDE again, but I just told him that what had happened. So he let me off for the night, and I went home. But that was my first NDE. But then, after several weeks, this is in 1978. After several weeks, I kept there was something that had happened. Something. Then I started getting these messages, strong messages. You need to go back to school. You need to go back to school. And I was thinking to myself, well, how am I going to do that? I'm the main breadwinner here. How am I going to do this? And then I kept getting these messages. You need to go back to school. Everything will be just fine. So I was thinking about it and thinking about it. And I talked to my precious wife at the time. And she was she was to the point she was probably ready to come off the road, so to speak. I mean, she basically toured with me full time, so she was ready. So anyway, then I decided, yes, I need to see if I can go back to college. But that was a real dichotomy simply because I was a failure in the academic world. I was a total failure. I barely got through. I was scared to death to even attempt it. But in Macon, Georgia, there was a wonderful private university there, a world-class university. So I went there and I got to talk to some of the faculty in the music department. And they convinced me that I needed to audition for them and see what kind of financial aid they can give me. And so I did audition and they went and talked and they finally came back out and they said, well, we got double good news for you. And I went, okay. He said, we're going to give you the largest music scholarship we've ever given. And I was like, oh my goodness. And then they said, on top of that, we're going to give you one whale of an academic scholarship. And I was like, my jaw hit the floor like, me? I'm an academic failure. Me? And then the words they said, he said, we have full confidence that you will be just fine. Same exact words. So I gave Razzie my notice. He signed with RCA Records. I went back to school, and and then I never looked back. The interesting thing about that, I made the dean's list every semester on my undergraduate degree. And at that university, you had to have a 3.6 or higher every semester to be on the dean's list. And I was easily made every semester. And then the carry just a little bit further on my master's, same thing. And then when I did my doctorate, same thing again. I got all kind of honors academically. But it was interesting how this voice told me, you'll be just fine. You'll be fine. So then I instantly, I got my degree. What I had to do on the side, all my schooling was paid for, but I still needed to support my precious family. My wife wanted to start a family, and we were living in a rented home. So I had to work full time still. And I ended up playing in a nightclub band again for 4 years while I went to school during the day. That's something everybody should try. I played in nightclubs till 2 in the morning, got to bed by 3, and got up by 6 or 7 every day and went to school all day. And I ended up doing a lot of my studying during the breaks in the club with disco music going. I'd be sitting there doing 2 and 4 part and mock conventions of my music theory. But that's what I did. And again, that voice kept telling me, you'll be just fine. So I ended up playing with that band, got my undergraduate degree, and then I ended up becoming a band director. And then I always wondered about why was I abused and bullied so bad growing up? Why did I feel so worthless? How does all this relate? Well, about that time, I started remembering about my NDE. I started getting visions, flashes about that, what all that was, and I'm trying to put all this together. And then it finally started to hit me as I became a teacher. It's for me to help children who are going through the same process, who don't have a support system to help them. And sure enough, as I started being a teacher, oh my goodness, I would see it every day. Obviously, you can always find the child that has been abused. They're sitting alone. They're quiet. They're not, they don't have that circle of friends. Why? We don't know why, but they would be that way. And so I would reach out. Obviously, I wasn't qualified to be either a psychiatrist or family counselor, but I could be there as a friend, as a listener. And a lot of these kids, 40 and 30 years later, they still are in contact with me. We talk all the time. They're precious, precious adults now. The same thing. So I'm moving on as a band director, and I did that for 10 years. And then I got that voice again. That voice just won't leave me alone. It came back again and says, you need to go back to school. Well, while I was a band director, I did get my master's because as a teacher, getting your master's is how you get a pay raise. So I did do that. And they said, you need to go back and get your doctorate and you need to get an in flute performance. And I was like, oh my goodness. And again, the problem I've had to deal with my entire life is this negativism within me as that I'm a failure. Even though I have had accomplished so much, soon as somebody or something hits me, it knocks me back down to that cellar again where I feel like I'm a failure. And I have to constantly pull myself back up all the time. So the voice wouldn't leave me alone. For 2 years, it kept hounding me. So finally, I practiced real hard and I auditioned at the University of Georgia School of Music. Oh my goodness. I had to do a full hour flute recital in front of the entire woodwind faculty. So I did
Beautiful.
the performance. I had to wait outside and they had to meet. And then they brought me in and they said, congratulations, you've been accepted. Oh my goodness. So I did. And then I had to figure out how am I going to, again, support my family while I go back to school. I had to make a full-time living. Um, while I was a band director, I had a real small flute teaching studio, very small. And fortunately, I had about 10, 12 students. And then this voice kept telling me that, here we go. You can make this a full-time job for yourself while you're in school. And I was thinking, this is only 10 or 12 students. How am I going to do that? But the voice would not leave me alone again. So sure enough, it kept giving me messages on how to advertise, how to do this, how to do that, so that I can build up my studio. And sure enough, I built it up to almost 60 students very, very quickly. So what would happen, I went up to Athens, Georgia during the week, lived up there, went to school. I came home Friday afternoon and over the weekend, I taught 60 kids. Then I would drive back early Monday morning and do that. And I did fabulous. Why did I do fabulous? It's because his voice kept telling me, you'll be just fine. So I did that. And to make a long story short, I got my doctorate in 1998. And then after that, I'm teaching college for almost 30 years. So I've been
Wow.
learning this. But along the journey, I've been able to help all of these students. And I discovered something. It doesn't matter if they're elementary all the way to college, they're still kids at heart. They need guidance. They need help. They need somebody that will sit down and listen to them unbiasedly and just be there as a friend. And I have connected with so many precious souls over the years. It's been wonderful. And then
Wow.
2001, I retired, and my wife and I moved down to Georgia. We moved down to Nebraska to be near my two wonderful sons and my two precious granddaughters. So that's why we're here.
Wow. David, so this is a beautiful ending to a terrible beginning. That actually brought me to tears. Um, Bullying is never okay. Any type of abuse is never okay. And I say that to you and I get chills because I think many of us and in the audience know what it's like to be bullied.
Yes.
And it's just never okay. But and not that this is okay for me, like saying that this is okay. But what I liked about your story is that you became like a hero out of it. That's what I love. And then not only that, you became a support system, someone that could actually support and actually identify from or what these children were going through. That's absolutely beautiful. And you are not a failure. You never have been a failure. And that brought me to tears to hear you say that. That really is something that really bothers me to hear. But I'm really happy that you got your happy ending in all of it.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. So now I'll get back and quit my chirping, my chatting, because you know me, I'm always chatting. How did so actually I should go right back to the beginning. What an experience in the dentist. Like, wow, I go to the dentist, I'm gonna have like a routine wisdom teeth
Right.
taken out, and I die. Like literally new fear unlocked, you know. Um, but you're up there on the ceiling outside your body. What did you even really think at that moment? Like, was this just ho hum, well, whatever? You kind of, said that, but like, did you really have any connection to your body?
No. At first, I didn't even
Mm.
know that was me. I was just like
Oh,
chilling and looking around. And then finally, I was looking, I go, well, I think that's me. Yeah.
why do you think that you felt that way? Like, I'm sorry, but have you ever thought about why you might feel that way?
Well, I guess once I've left the physical body, maybe there's that disconnect where where I'm sort of in between the physical body and going beyond, I guess. because that's
Mhm.
as far as I've ever gone, but I
Right.
just wasn't concerned about it.
Right. But something shifted, and then you actually knew the shift came in, and then you started to hear a voice.
Yes.
Who was the voice in your opinion?
Actually been hearing that voice since I was a child. And
Oh.
yeah, because after I would get the bullies called it my daily beating. I'd be on the bathroom floor sitting there crying, and the voice would tell me, David, you're going to be just fine. David, you're going to be fine. Basically hang in there. You're going to be fine.
So who was it, do you think?
Well, for me, it's either got to be Jesus or God. I grew up a Methodist, so
Yeah.
I'm very much aware of that.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. Great. Okay. So God or Jesus.
Yeah.
And did you feel did you feel any safer after you heard the voice in that one instance?
I always felt safer, no matter when and where
Okay.
they would talk to me. I always just felt like,
Mm.
oh, thank you. I just felt better
Oh,
afterwards. Like they
yeah.
seemed to make my world better from what it was at that moment.
So I know that you talked about having an understanding of why this happened to you. But can we go a little bit deeper into why? Why did you have the bullying? Do you think there's a possibility that you might have planned this prior to your incarnation at all?
Well, based on what I have learned since this through my readings, yes, I feel like it was planned now. I feel like my whole life's been a planned journey, and that
Mhm.
the NDE was intentional for me to change directions.
Right, right.
Kind of like
And
a
so
kick
then
in the
sorry.
backside or something.
Right. Yeah, because you were a complete creator,
Yeah, I didn't talk about it, but every time I
or
backed
you
up these
are, I
different
should say.
groups, they would offer me a job. And I could have gone with Alabama. I could have gone with all these other groups. But at the time, Razzie technically was a bigger name, so I thought I was more secure financially. Plus, I didn't have to travel as much because, again, my precious wife, I mean, traveling around the country all the time. So
Yes.
I just felt like it was a better situation. Yeah.
So interesting. So, how did this experience change your understanding of what it means to be human?
Well, again, based on what I have learned since then through my readings, I feel like we're all here for a purpose. We're all here for a journey. And like you talked about, possibly it's all pre-planned. And we're here to learn and enjoy and cherish every moment while we're here in the physical form.
Yeah, beautiful. So you came back from that experience with a sense of well, no, you didn't. You had the hearing prior to. Did you have any other after effects once you came back to the body?
I've always been very sensitive to people,
Okay.
extremely
Mhm.
sensitive, very sensitive. And I can seem to sense what people are thinking, what they're feeling, what the room tone is like. I've always been able to do that. And as far as since the NDE, uh, I'm able to see shadows. I've even, I think, seen spirits. And I'll tell my wife, and she'll go, I don't see anything. But I'll see smoke, swirling smoke. I'll see translucent shadows walking in front of lights. I'll see things like that.
Interesting.
And I've had some other experiences that have really convinced me that I'm being watched and guided. If I can share a
Okay.
couple.
Please
Okay.
do.
Okay. I was back. I was being a band director at the time, and I would gig on the side, of course, because it's always good money. And I was driving my van in Georgia. It's all very hilly and a lot of trees, and going up hills, down hills, round hills, etc. And then I was typically after a gig on a Saturday night, it's 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and I'm driving 2 or 3 hours between there and getting back home. Well, I finally did it one night. I always thought I was Superman. I could drive all the way. Well, just one night driving through a little town, I fell asleep while I was driving my van full of all the band's equipment. And and then my shoulder nearest the window, all of a sudden somebody jerked my shoulder hard, really hard, and said, "David, wake up." Well, of course, I woke up, and as soon as I woke up, I was 10 feet from a department store window. So I slammed on my brakes and I just sat there for about 2 minutes and I realized who it was. There was no doubt in my mind. And I've had several instances like that I'm being guided and watched all the time.
David, I can actually empathize and really, I can really understand what you're saying about that, voice that woke you up because that is something that happened to me as well. But that was prior to my near-death experience when I was a young, just got my driver's license, and I fell asleep at the wheel.
Oh,
I know, right? And I was so excited, so I was able to just go everywhere, so I'd stay late over at a friend's house and then drive home, but I fell asleep. And I'm not kidding, I had the same thing. I heard my name, I woke back up, and I'm not kidding, if I didn't get that call, I would have went head on with another vehicle.
yeah. See, it wasn't your time yet.
Not yet, thank goodness, right? S have you ever thought about that in more detail about, being your time and having those things happen, like, kind of like it's not your time. So, do you believe that we may have some sort of exit point or exit points that we could leave if we choose? Have you ever thought about that?
Well, I feel like that we all have exit points. Some of them we can bypass. Some of them, that's our exit point, depending upon what we have accomplished during our journey.
I notice that I do feel very similar to that. And I'm sure you do too. When you look back on your life, you can actually kind of clearly see the exit points,
Oh, yeah. I had
right?
several other NDEs that weren't quite as dramatic as my first one, but very similar as far as how I felt afterwards. Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
come out of your body before, like almost died.
Well, I had the first one in the dentist chair. That was in 78. And then in 81, I with my heart arrhythmia let me back it up. So I'll back it
Mm,
up. After the dentist chair, remember I told you originally I was born with a heart arrhythmia.
yeah.
Well, this time it decided it's time we're gonna make trouble for you. So I would be fine for 3 to 6 months, and then I could go into a full total arrhythmia. Total arrhythmia for me is I'm flat on my back, my heart's going over 200 beats a minute. I cannot walk, I cannot talk, I cannot do anything. I could have a stroke at any minute. And here I was 28 years old. So here in 1981, I was 31. And again, after several months of being arrhythmia free, it went back into arrhythmia. I collapsed in the home. My wife had to call 911. They rushed me to the hospital. And they had me in the cardio unit at the hospital in Macon, Georgia. They had me all wired up because they're so concerned I could have a stroke at any moment and all that kind of stuff. And so there I am, wired up. And just about this time, this young nurse came in to take my vitals. I went out. I went out, but this time I just went to this black void. It was a total black void. It was quiet and peaceful. And as I was there, I could not hear or see anything, but I was in no pain. There was nothing happening other than I was just basically hanging out in this black void. And I don't know, it's probably several minutes. And then eventually, all of a sudden, I was jerked back into my body just when I could hear the lights and the sirens are going because I was wired up because I coded blue. And all the doctors and nurses had just come in ready to try to resuscitate me. And then I'm sitting there looking at them like nothing happened. And I had
Wow.
another experience, the last one I had.
Mhm.
This is the probably early 2000s, and I was in my home. And again, the heart goes in and out over several months. And finally, I guess during the night, my heart went back into arrhythmia. And I didn't know it till I got up middle of the night to go to the restroom, and I totally collapsed. And then my heart stopped. My wife called 911. Fortunately, the fire department was like 2 blocks away, and they were there within a couple minutes. And again, I just went to this void. It was just a black void again. And by then, I was like, well, here I am again. I was getting pretty used to this, that's what it was like. And then after several minutes, I came back and I opened my eyes just when the paramedics were going to do CPR on me, just when they were
Ooh.
getting ready to start. And I looked at him and they go, oh, he's back. Okay. And they said the same thing. There was no pulse. They could not find any sign of life or anything. And I've talked to cardiologists about this condition, and I cannot get a straight answer out of them because they say, technically speaking, if your heart stops, it does not restart itself. But I've been coded blue at the hospital in the cardio unit, right there with the paramedics, the dentist's office. So I cannot explain. But I feel like all this has been part of my journey. The coup de grace for me. Every time I've gone to arrhythmia and I was just on my back, you have to understand when I'm in arrhythmia, I feel no pain. I'm perfectly fine as far as pain. I just can't get up and do anything. So, I'm just laying there all the time for days, months. The longest I was in arrhythmia was 3 months. And that was horrible. I could do nothing but just lay there. But the last time this happened, I was in my early 50s. And same thing again, after 4 or 5 months of being arrhythmia free, it went into arrhythmia. And my wife had to call 911, put me in the hospital, wired me up, all the same. But that night, after my wife left, bless her heart, after she left, she was so tired of this too. She left. I was just laying there on my back and I was talking to God. And I said, God, I'm very, very tired of this. I said, I am very tired. I cannot fight this anymore. And I raised my arms and I said to him, I'm putting this in your hands. I cannot do this anymore. The next morning, I was arrhythmia free, and I've never been in arrhythmia since. The doctors cannot figure this out.
You know what? That's incredible. Someone heard you. Yeah. And you wanna know something else? I also my NDE was stemmed from atrial fibrillation, AFib, out of the blue.
You know it
Over
very well.
250 beats a minute.
Yep.
I felt no pain, but boy, was I sweating, and I was starting to get really scared. Well, I had never felt it before, and it was just happened and never happened again. And I will tell you this, my friend, they had to do a cardio version on me. So, did you have that as well? You had
I've had
3.
3.
And did you have the one where they give you the anesthetic and then they give you the other drug and it completely stops your heart?
They did it the
Like chemical?
old-fashioned way. They shocked me to
Okay.
stop the heart, then they re-shocked me to restart it.
Okay. So I had one that they gave me anesthetic, then they were administering another drug to stop the heart. And then then I had to sign a piece of paper that said, hey, if you don't come back, we're not liable, right? And then I woke up, but I woke up in a black space too.
Yes, ma'am.
I woke up, I was not afraid. I was just like,
Right.
well, what? I actually, my first thought was, oh, thank God that's over. That's what I thought, because it was so, I just was, well, you know what this feels like. But I saw a light come, and then I looked and it came closer and it was Jesus.
Oh,
Yes.
oh, wow.
And I tell you, my life changed from that moment on.
Yes.
Mhm. So I know all too well what that black void is like. And it is not scary at all,
No,
is it? Mm-mm.
no, not at all.
Beautiful. Oh, I've got such goosebumps. We have something in common, don't we? You know, David, you've basically died many times, or you're near death many times. Do you fear death now?
No,
No.
no. I'll just go home.
Yeah. And where do you think home is? Where is this home? Is it up there? Is it over there? Is it right here in a different dimension or a realm? What do you think in your opinion?
I feel like home is everything. This is home.
Mm.
We're just not
Mhm.
seeing it because of our limited ability as a human. Yeah.
Mm. I love that. David, if you were sitting next to someone, a loved one who might be ready for transition, what words would you say to them?
I haven't done that yet, but I'm sure I will. Yeah. I would just let them talk if they're able to talk and to try to talk to and I would try to talk to them about what it really is all about on the other side and what is waiting for them, the families, the spirit, everybody. It's just going to be such a wonderful thing when they transitioned. I remember my grandmother before she died, several days before she died, she was pointing out all the family in her room. Yeah.
Wow,
She was seeing all her family days before she passed. Yeah, yeah.
that's beautiful. What did you think of that when she was doing that?
Well, at the time, I was probably 20 or 21. I was like, I didn't know what to make of it. I thought maybe she's just fantasizing, because,
Mhm.
you know.
Interesting. So interesting. I have one more question about actually your music. How has this experience influenced your creativity, your music, and the way you express yourself?
Oh, well, for me, music is all about vibrations. And I'm literally not on this planet when I'm playing my music. I'm I- I'm feeling the whole universe when I play my music. And that can be somebody asked me this one, what's your favorite kind of music? Because you have a doctorate in classical flute. I said, music. I said, any kind of music that's good music, I love because of the vibrations. It could be country, pop, rock, jazz,
Yep.
classical.
Me too. For someone, David, quietly struggling or searching for meaning, what would you want them to know now?
Well, number one, they're not alone. They are not alone. They just have to open up and listen. I've had my voice inside of me probably since I was 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. And nowadays, because nowadays, fortunately, there are books out there they could read. There are
Uh-huh.
books out there like mine, but there are books out there they can read there's videos, there's podcast channels like yours. They can go learn and to find out they are not alone.
Beautiful. David, for people that feel called to connect with you, will you share more about your work, your music, any services, any published works you have, and where people can find you?
Certainly. Well, for my music, you can go to Spotify and you could just type in Dr. David Klee and I got a page there and I got 6 or 8 albums, some classical, some light jazz I wrote. It's all there. I think I got 6 new jazz albums out and they're all in there. You could go to YouTube and just type in again Dr. David Klee, and you'll find all my videos. I've got several hundred, and they're anywhere from my smooth jazz to classical to pop covers. I do all that, and I've got a lot of educational stuff on how to play the flute, how to do this or that on the flute. Yeah. And as far as my book, if they type in on Amazon.com, Finding the Boy Inside by Dr. David
Oh,
Klee, if they type that in, it'll come up and they could purchase it.
beautiful. David, we will have all your links in the description box below.
Hmm.
And, we're down to the last question, and this is the one. This is the returned signature question. So everyone who returns with a truth. What truth did you return with that you think humanity needs to know right now?
Well, I was pursuing music full time when I was trying to be a performer because I was trying to do what I needed to do for me to reach out and become very successful and world known and famous. And then I realized after the experience, it's not me, it's everybody else. It's the love. Sharing the love, spreading the love through interactions and helping each other. And that's what has really changed with me.
David, I want to thank you from my heart to yours so very much for being here on the return today. And what I hear in your story is that one moment can change everything. And what you touched on the other side stayed with you. Thank you for bringing your story, your truth, and your light onto the returned today.
Thank you for having me.
You're so very welcome. To all those watching or listening, may this be a gentle reminder. Sometimes it's not the big moments that change us. It's the ones we never saw coming. And maybe today is just a reminder to stay present because everything can shift in an instant. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay open, stay curious, and keep returning to the truth within you.